Hello and welcome into Sunday morning's edition of the Arizona State Sun Devils Insider Podcast. And my name is Kevin Hicks, and I'm your lead beat writer for the Arizona State Sun Devils on SI. And I am joined by my great co-writer Tanner Capolini today, coming fresh off of a 24-16 loss to the Houston Cougars for the Arizona State football team. And now they face an uphill climb to get back to the Big 12 title game, to get back to a spot in the college football playoff. Uh, Tanner, how are you doing this morning, and what are your thoughts on the game? Just instant, rapid reaction.
Hey Kevin, yeah, thanks for having me on. Doing well. Could be better though with that ASU game. That was a really disappointing game. I know that the final score was close, but it really wasn't. It was 24-0 at one point, and just coming off a Texas Tech game that they did with that big win that they had, to really show up empty for a majority of the games, really just disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. And possibly, I think it's hard to pinpoint a singular thing that went wrong for them because a lot of things went wrong for them. Um, Coach Kenny Dillingham said after the game that maybe Jordan Tyson makes a difference, and he takes the game to a point where we win despite not playing good enough to win. But the team just did not play well. Connor Wiegman had his way on the ground, 111 rushing yards, and it kind of similar to the day that Devin Dampier had 2 weeks ago. The offense got in a little bit of a rhythm at certain points, even in the first half, but they were never able to finish a drive. There was a bad snap on the first field goal attempt by Jesus Gomez, left points on the board there, and that could have those two field goals that were missed could have easily impacted the game. Uh, Special teams was rough once again. Like outside of those bad snaps, missed field goals, whatever you want to call them. The offensive line struggled a lot this week after having a very, very strong week against Texas Tech, which just makes no sense because Texas Tech has probably the best defensive line in the Big 12. And Sam Levitt is injured again, so it's all uh, it's all sunshine and rainbows in Tempe right now. The Sun Devils are 6-2. They do control their own destiny to make it to the Big 12 title game. Yeah, that's unfortunately not the case. But Tanner, what are some of your assessments on just what exactly went wrong for the Sun Devils?
Yeah, I think the main thing that's kind of I think concerning is kind of like the how kind of much Houston was up in this game. Like the fact that I think if you went into this game and say ASU lost this game, say like let's say 33-30, and it was this like epic shootout and they lost on like a last second field goal by Houston, I would be like, oh okay, well, hey, at least it was close. They're still in it. And it's like, well, yeah, they're technically still in it type of deal, but they really just like this was Houston's game really, and um, I think for me the main thing is the line of scrimmage. They really lost that battle on really both sides of the ball. Defensively, they didn't get that much pressure on Connor Wangman. They really did not. And the pass rush I think has kind of slowed down the past couple of weeks. I'm a huge Clayton Smith guy. He had a really hot start to the season. He's been quieter as of late. Prince Dorba, he was out there, but then he went out with an injury. The defensive tackles, I think they've been good, but you would like to see a bit more of them pass rushing. Like I think the pass rush has definitely regressed a bit, which is not good. And then, like, yeah, you said Connor Wangman ran all over them several times, and it's like that's really concerning because we've seen it twice, like you said, Devin Dampier, and there's a lot of mobile quarterbacks in college, so that's something they have to fix. In offensive line, they just really struggled. I know Coach Dillingham said post game they did a lot of stuff up front. The defensive line did for Houston. They had just had trouble protecting. It seemed like Houston did a lot of stuff up front, like with twists and stunts and stuff that ASU was just not ready for. I think the offensive line too. I think sometimes they struggle in movement. I think sometimes they're not the fastest unit, and I think that in this game, that was the big thing is Houston was just able to kind of move around them. That was disappointing because I remember during the podcast, the preview we did, I said that, hey, Houston's pass rush is not that good, and they looked really good. So yeah, I think it really. I mean, there's other stuff. I could go on for like 10 minutes here and talk about all the issues, but I really think they lost in the trenches, and when you lose that, you lose the game.
That's a great point, Tanner. I think probably the biggest factor in that loss ultimately is probably the pass rush, like you said. If you ask me one thing, because there's a lot of things I think we both agree that didn't go their way, and that's the reason why the loss was so decisive. But if you're to pinpoint one thing, it probably is the pass rush. I believe through 5 games, I think they were near the very top of the nation in sacks. I think around 2021 sacks, and since then it's been pretty quiet. And as the season goes on, your pass rush needs to get stronger, not fall back. Especially with the game against Iowa State coming up, in which Rocco Becht is a quarterback that can really hurt you when he has time in the pocket. We saw him yesterday against BYU. He really struggled when BYU got pressure on him. He threw 3 interceptions, including a pick six that pretty much lost them the game. So that's going to be a massive, massive game because Arizona State is in position to possibly still contend for the Big 12 title. It's going to be a lot more difficult, exponentially more difficult now, but they do have a chance, and they really need to clean up the pass rush. Obviously, Prince Dorba being hurt's kind of a factor. It has to be considered. But one of the other things that I want to talk about was just the lack of synergy on offense. The offensive line felt like it was off almost the entire day. We talked about that a lot. They decided to start Wade Helton at left guard instead of Himeto Abigbo. They started Makua Pule at center for the second straight game. And you'd think that the O-line would hold up quite well this week, considering what they did last week, but it just didn't. And that kind of seeped into the rest of the offense. You look at the raw stats and you're like, the offense didn't have a bad day, but when you watched the game, they were rarely ever in sync. The receivers were either dropping or miscalculating the ball. The run game didn't really get established until later on. The Levitt didn't really get going until the third quarter of the game. So there's just a lot of things working against them, and it's just I don't have many words to say about. I thought this was going to be a game where the offense really had another standout showing.
Yeah, I think for me with the offense, it seemed super stagnant, and I don't know. It feels like for me, and I think this is a big issue. Even in the Texas Tech win and the TCU win and these other wins that they've had, the offense really struggles to get going early in the game, and that's kind of concerning because usually your first drive in the game or two, that's the one you kind of game plan for. That's the one you really go with, and just I feel like that ASU has really struggled to find the correct play calling. Like my main complaint last week with Texas Tech is the play calling got too cute, but this game I thought it was a bit too like kind of cut and dry. Like I think they really need to find that middle ground, and I think that they really struggle to do that. The other issue is that they really struggle to run the ball early. They just don't do it a whole ton. And one thing that would have been nice to see in this game was maybe some screen passes getting going to Malik Brown. Like, okay, if you can't run the ball because of your line, okay, at least do something there with the screen game or something like that, or just kind of anything. It was just really tough getting going early. I also noticed too, all the routes they ran were a lot of kind of the sit down routes where a lot of these throws to Levitt were basically the guy would or the receivers would run, stop, and then try to catch it rather than trying to throw it well in movement. And when they did throw it to guys who were moving, they had success. So just the game plan seemed really just kind of bland, and I wish that they went a bit more creative. I'm not saying we need to do all these trick plays. No, I'm not really a fan of those, but I think you needed a bit more. And I think that the biggest thing was, I think ASU, without Jordan Tyson, said, okay, we want to play kind of run the ball, just kind of keep it simple, or maybe not run the ball, just kind of keep it simple this game. But I think they did that almost like kind of too much, and it kind of backfired. So, I mentioned last week's podcast. I remember saying there's a Texas Tech drive I really love where they're doing play action, having Levin on the run. Like I just wish they had more fluidity in the passing game offense. I think that's what they really missed.
Yeah, and also you can look at very pointed parts of the game where the offense had an opportunity to really break out, and for one reason or another, it didn't happen. There was a couple of times with Jaron Hamilton. One time he got interfered with, I believe, on a downfield shot, and that probably would have been a touchdown if he had not been grabbed. I remember us talking about that, how the college rule is maybe not the best because it allows the defense an easy way out if they get beat in coverage, since it's only a 15-yard penalty instead of a spot foul. Uh, there was another time where Jaron Hamilton had an opportunity to get a walk-in touchdown as well, and the ball went right through his hands. I don't remember what point of the game that was in, but there were a couple of moments where he really had the opportunity, and whether it was getting interfered with or just a slight misfire from Levitt or miscalculation from Hamilton, it that prevented some scoring. Um, the I feel like the receiving core did a pretty strong job considering all the circumstances, but at the same time, you would have liked to see, like you said, maybe some screenplays for Malik Brown. We know how dynamic he is in open space. Maybe even some carry plays for Jaron Hamilton. We saw Jaron Hamilton run a jet sweep last week. Maybe try and get him involved in the run game. There were certain things that I feel like they could have done that really would have served the offense well. But ultimately, it just wasn't their night. And uh, one more thing that I really wanted to talk about was the fact that Kanye Udo only got one carry in the game. After the game, he posted a cryptic tweet on X. Uh, it was the cloud covering the face emoji, and everybody was pretty much jumping the gun and saying that he's openly saying he's unhappy now. Uh, and I don't think there's I can't say for certain what he meant by that because I don't know what he was thinking when he typed it. But I can't imagine that he's too happy only getting one carry in a game, especially when Kyson Brown is out right now. That was very interesting to me because I feel like his downhill running style really could have served him well in this game. But then again, like we said, they just didn't play well enough to win ultimately. What are your thoughts on that, Tanner?
Yeah, it's really weird because I don't know. He got the one carry, but it was I think it was on a third down. It did not make sense when he got it. So it almost kind of seemed like ASU said, like, here, you want the ball, have it one time. And I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if I just don't. And it's really weird because Kenny Dillingham is usually a guy who's not a fan of like, just kind of messing around. Whether it be, like, he just does not like players who mess around, whether it be taunting or whatever, just things like that. So I really do hope, I don't want to sit here and speculate, but I really do hope that, the coaching staff really helps him through whatever he's going through and just really is able to kind of sort this whole episode out. I do think he should get the ball more. I think he is a really good runner. I think he has a great physicalness that could really help. But who knows? Could this be an off the field thing? I don't know. I really don't. Could this not be? Could it just be a playing thing? I don't know. But yeah, I do hope they get it sorted out, and I trust Coach Dillingham to kind of um, get this thing figured out, and that's kind of my whole kind of sentiment on this game. I really hope that Coach can kind of get this team back and rolling. You have Iowa State next, which is a really tough game, and hopefully they can be able to win that one. I think that's a tough one. Iowa State's going to look for revenge for that Big 12 game. Going there is tough. This team has struggled on the road. And, I thought that Coach Dillingham postgame, I did like his attitude. I liked how he said, we kind of have to move on but learn from it. I think one thing that I like about Coach is that he doesn't get too high or too low. Like the Texas Tech win, he was like, yeah, this team won. We look, it was great, but, we still have stuff to improve on. And then after this loss to Houston, he's like, okay, yeah, that was unfortunate. There's still tough stuff to improve on. Like, he doesn't get, like, too high or too low, and I really like that. I think that's good for a coach. I think that's a good attitude because it could have been worse if they, like, really celebrated with Texas Tech and they're like, woohoo, we're going to win it all. And then, you could have come crashing down with this game and been like, hey, we're like done. But I think he was kind of even keel for both games. Where Texas Tech, he's like, okay, good, but could be better. And this game, there's stuff to improve on. So yeah, I think that's a big thing of just kind of having that mindset with this culture, and I think hopefully that can help with next week's game.
Yes, that's a great point, um, Tanner. Dillingham really does know how to put things in perspective. I think that he's, like you said, he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. He said, yeah, we played a really bad game. We didn't deserve to win that game. Even if Jordan was here and he somehow helped us to win the game despite not playing well enough, there's still things we have to clean up. But he also left room for optimism. He said we were the same record in the conference this time last year. The only thing that he's forgetting is that, or he was omitting, is that last year there were no undefeated teams in the conference at this point. Now, as Arizona State tries to make the climb back into the top two of the standings, there's BYU who just won yesterday. There's Cincinnati who just won yesterday. They're both undefeated in league play. Now Texas Tech has the advantage on you once again. The tiebreaker doesn't matter since they only have one conference loss, and they play BYU, but if they lose to BYU, that means BYU probably still stays ahead of ASU in the standings. Then you have Utah, who you're tied with, and Utah has the tiebreaker. You're behind Houston. So you have to climb 4 or 5, maybe even 6 teams to get back into the top two of the standings right now. And that is just going to be an unbelievably high climb for them to make it back. And like you said, it starts with Iowa State, who's going to be a challenging game. They're going to be motivated, even though they're essentially eliminated from the Big 12 title race now. They're going to be motivated to get revenge. And it just came out just a few minutes ago that the game's going to be a 9 a.m. local time kickoff. So it's going to be a morning game for them. And we know Arizona State has not had the best track record of performing in games where they cross time zones and have an early kickoff time. So I think that has to be a factor as well. Um, and Sam Levitt's health is a question too. It didn't sound too promising after the game when Dillingham said that they had to get more imaging on the injury that he suffered. And the walk off the field after the game didn't look too promising either. So we don't really know his status. And it's that all those factors kind of piling up against Arizona State just feels like it's just not their year. I'm not going to say never until I'm going to say never until is actually the point where they have no mathematical chance, but right now it's just not looking great.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think you know I don't know. It's kind of mixed because last year they had a really good season, and sometimes that happens in football where teams regress. They have a great year, they make the playoffs, and then kind of take a step back, and that just might be the case with ASU. It is just though kind of just disappointing because there's a lot of really good talent on this team. I don't think this team's season is done, and I think as long even like I hope they win out. I hope they still win games, and even if they're not in the Big 12, hey, at least you kind of have it would be a 3-loss season. Okay, it could be worse. Like I do hope this team still continues to perform well because you want the consistency for the program, even if it might not be another say good season it might not be as good as last year. You still want a good year. You don't want this team to go all the way back. So yeah, hopefully they can win Iowa State. I feel good about that one. And yeah, I still really like this program. After the Texas Tech game, I said this program is really good. I still believe in that. I'm not going to backtrack that against, after just one game. I think there's still a lot of talent here with ASU, and I trust his coaching staff to make the adjustments and, yeah, hopefully get the win next week.
Yeah, and that's a great point from you. I truly don't believe that success in college football is linear unless you're a program like Alabama where they expect to win national titles year in and year out. When you're a program like Arizona State crawling out of a very dark time with Herm Edwards and all the NCAA sanctions that followed, the fact that you made it to a college football playoff as soon as you did was just you're just rolling with house money at that point. And although it might be disappointing that they fall short of a college football playoff this year, especially with the expectations they had coming into the season, you still see what Kenny Dillingham is building, even though they've been kind of inconsistent this season. Sometimes that's just where the cards fall. Last season, they had very, very strong injury fortune. They didn't really have many injuries that were long term outside of Prince Dorba, or that at least that impacted the team. Jordan Tyson at the very, very end of the season, but he was healthy up until the last game of the regular season. This season, they just haven't been very healthy. This season, the offensive line has obviously been impacted by the loss of Leif Fatanu much more than anybody had thought. Ben Coleman went down for the season, and his leadership we've talked about is very invaluable, even beyond what he does on the field. And there's just a lot of factors to me that went. Their schedule is a lot more front loaded this year than last year. There's just a lot of factors that have gone into this season not going necessarily as planned. But like you said, I think a 9-win season and not making the college football playoff can still be considered a success despite the expectations. We all know it's very college football world, just like anything else, is very based in instant gratification. People want the immense success. People want to believe that the expectations should be sky high every single season. And like I said, growth in college football is not usually linear. So a 9-win season, getting to a decent bowl game and winning that, getting double digits for the second straight season, going into a 2026 season where you have a big opportunity to knock off a program like Texas A&M, I think that's you can chalk that up as at least it's not a failure. And that's really my thoughts on that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that'll be looked at as a solid season. I do think your point stands well. Where I think they were kind of quote unquote ahead of, say, schedule last year with how well they did. And the fact that they're still competitive and still like a good team this year is, I think, impressive. You sometimes look in football where there's teams who have like a really great year, they have kind of this unexpected year, and the next year they just regress mightily. Like ASU, yeah, they've had some regression, but it's still like a really solid, good team. And I think next year, if we're here next year kind of talking about this, then I'll kind of start to worry. I'm not worrying now, and I still like think this team like winning a bowl game is still good. Like I think these getting to double digits. Like I think that'll be looked at as a nice season for this team. And like you said, sometimes things are not linear, and I think that's just a really good point and a great way to just really nail it on the head.
All right, Tanner. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show and move into the Iowa State week?
Yeah, I just think that overall, I think I guess the kind of good news out of this game was, first of all, there's some players who really shined in the loss. I thought Malik McLean was awesome, so that was cool to see. And this team got going late, so hopefully they can build off of that here, and have a good week of practice, really get things going, have a good attitude going into this game. I'm sure it's really tough for the guys. But hopefully, they can kind of get their spirits up and have another week of hopefully a successful week for ASU football.
Absolutely, Tanner. And Tanner will actually be joining me from practice on Tuesday, so that will be a great opportunity. We might talk about it a little bit on the podcast on Friday ahead of Arizona State's big game against Iowa State. Tanner, thank you so much for joining me at the game yesterday. Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. And we will see you with a new episode of the Arizona State Insider Podcast tomorrow. So thank you all for tuning in once again.